Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Thursday, September 18th, 2025. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Setoodeh. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, we'll hear from Ramin Setoodeh on his sit-down with Julia Roberts and the cast of writer-director Luca Guadagnino's provocative new film After the Hunt. And chief music critic Chris Willman revisits a moment in time that defines an era, Lilith Fair. There's a new documentary out on Sarah McLachlan's 1990s all-female touring summer music festival. But before we get to that, here are some headlines just in this morning that you need to know. Truthfully, there's nothing people are talking about more right now than Jimmy Kimmel. The situation with his show getting yanked from ABC happened with shocking speed on Wednesday afternoon. The news is still flying as we record this morning. Variety's team is doing a ton of reporting to understand what's going on and why it's all happening. We will have an update, perspective, and analysis in Monday's episode of Daily Variety. I suspect the story will evolve quite a bit between now and then. Until then, keep your eyes on Variety.com, where we are watching this very live story with great intensity about what it signals for media, for television, and for our culture. Now we turn to conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. Ramin Setoodeh joins us to give us the backstory on his starry sit-down with Julia Roberts, Ayo Edebiri, Andrew Garfield, Chloe Sevigny, Michael Stuhlbarg, and director Luca Gaudagnino for Ramin's cover story for the Variety cover story on their new movie After the Hunt. The subject matter of the movie is very serious, but as Ramin explains, this troupe had a lot of fun making the movie. Ramin Setoodeh, co-editor-in-chief of Variety. I hear that's a pretty good gig.
It is a good gig. I think we share it for a reason because it's such a good gig.
Ramin, I was so excited when you landed Julia Roberts for our cover. She's part of this very provocative new movie from director Luca Gaudagnino called After the Hunt, and it made waves in Venice, and Julia is an object of fascination everywhere she goes. She certainly grabbed his attention in Venice, and you got the chance to sit down with her. Tell us everything, Ramin.
We're very lucky. We did the first cover story for this movie with Julia Roberts, Andrew Garfield, and Ayo Edebiri, and they were joined by Chloe Sevigny and Michael Stuhlbarg, and Luca also joined. When I talk to journalism students or I talk about the craft of interviewing, people often want to know, what is it like talking to actors? What is it like sitting down with an actor? And you and I have talked about this before. We often will keep our cool. It's a job. We go in there with our questions. But there are situations and instances where you grow up loving someone so much that it's like your heart grows because you love them so much. And for me, growing up and watching movies and loving movies, Julia Roberts was my favorite actor. She was the best movie star. I saw all her movies in the 90s, even the ones that weren't well reviewed. It was just to go into a movie theater and to watch a Julia Roberts movie was a real part of my upbringing and my love for movies and my love for romantic comedies. So to be in the same space as Julia Roberts was a little bit of my heart's racing experience. It was a little bit of an out-of-body experience. But we had a great conversation. I'm really, really proud of this cover story. I hope everyone reads it. Julia Roberts is very fun and very funny in person, and she still is a true movie star. She radiates a movie star glow when you're in her presence.
She's playing a flinty college professor, very ambitious, who gets involved in a big scandal that involves Andrew Garfield and her star student, played by Ayo Edebiri. It sounds like a very meaty discussion of very contemporary themes about accusation and the lines of consent and just all kinds of very difficult issues, the kind of things that you don't see so much on big screen movies, the kind of things that have been like the province of limited series. Tell us about the movie After the Hunt and how you think that's going to be received.
So this movie will be opening the New York Film Festival next week. It is being distributed by Amazon MGM. It opens in theaters on October 10th. And you described it very accurately, Cynthia. It is a movie that is very contemporary. Has a rip from the headlines feeling to it, given everything that we've gone through. Luca specifically said he doesn't like that this is described as a movie about the Me Too movement because it's about these characters, but it certainly is set against the background of Me Too, and it is about what happens after there is this assault allegation on campus. It's not a lighthearted film. And one of the things that was hard for Julia was getting into the headspace of the character that she plays, Alma, and playing this professor. But it reminded her very much of working with Mike Nichols. And she misses Mike Nichols very, very much. They worked together on Closer and Charlie Wilson's War. And there was a period in Julia's career after winning the Oscar where she and Mike collaborated on these two projects. And I do think this is a return to form for her of that period of her career. And she and Luca just love each other. It was a total love fest. They admire each other so much. Brian Lord introduced them. He represents both of them. And it was like they were cinematic soulmates. And even in our conversation, they were finishing each other's sentences. They were having a lot of fun. And Luca actually volunteered to direct Julia in My Best Friend's Wedding 2 if that happens, which I'm not really sure if that movie's up for grabs because Celine Song is writing a screenplay, but it was a lot of fun, and they clearly really love each other.
The Guadagnino take on My Best Friend's Wedding 2, that is just worth the price of admission right there. It's a very interesting choice for her. This is the first time in a while that we've heard the words Oscar buzz around Julia.
I asked her why she chose this role. What was interesting is she read the script, she liked the script, but for her it really is about working with the right director that she feels comfortable with and she feels that she's going to be connected with on set. And so she said she was interested in the role, but she didn't make the decision to take on this project until she and Luca sat together. They were at a friend's house. They were sitting together, and then they just started talking, and they couldn't stop talking. They talked for hours together, and they really were connected. And that's what inspired her to make the role, which I thought was very interesting because a lot of actors will choose a director based on what they see on screen. But for Julia, it really is about the personal connection.
Your story does a great job of weaving in many voices, and you feel like you really have a sense of the making of this movie. And although, as you said, it is not a comedy, these are not light subjects, the whole troupe seemed like they just had a blast together. They describe a lot of fun things, and a certain star's banana bread gets a lot of discussion in your story.
So Julia invited everyone to her beach house, and they rehearsed as if they were rehearsing a play, and she made them banana bread. She's a very good cook, according to Luca. And Luca took a loaf of the banana bread on a trip he was taking, and he was at the airport, and the staff at the airport tasted the banana bread, and they fell in love with the bread too. And so, yeah, this cast is very close together, even though this is a very difficult subject matter that they're playing on screen. In person, they really love each other. They were cracking jokes. And what was also interesting is that Luca, he moves very quickly. They shot this movie in 28 days. This surprised me because I've seen a lot of his films, but he doesn't ask for a lot of takes. So he said he comes from the Clint Eastwood school of filmmaking where he only asks for 1 or 2 takes, and he makes movies very quickly, very economically, and he wants to stay under budget, which was also a very interesting thing that I learned while talking to them for this story.
And I'm sure those words are going to warm the hearts of studio executives everywhere, on time and under budget. Thank you for bringing Julia Roberts to us. We have that incredible smile and that Julia Roberts gaze on our cover. Dear listeners, run to get your print copy of Variety. Go to Variety.com and look through all the photos. They are fantastic. It's so much more to come on After the Hunt and Julia here this award season. Thank you for taking the time to chat.
Thank you very much, Cynthia.
We'll end here with a clip that captures the camaraderie among this cast. It's from the cover story video that accompanies Ramin's great reporting. This clip starts as Michael Stuhlbarg is talking about working with Guadagnino, Timothy Chalamet, and Armie Hammer on the 2017 drama Call Me By Your Name. And then Chloe Sevigny, Julia Roberts, and Andrew Garfield chime in.
I got to live with it for about 2 months before we threw it in to be shot. I got to know Timmy, and I got to know Armie, and I got to know
I'd like to get to know Timmy.
cast.
Sorry.
You heard it here first.
Thoughts are out loud with Chloe.
Wow. The magic markers are working there.
Wow.
Magic.
They don't even smell like grape.
Even another time. It was amazing.
Wow. All right. So you asked her Val.
And now Chris Willman joins us to talk about the new Hulu documentary, Lilith Fair, Building a Mystery, which premieres September 21st. Chris gives us his first-hand account of what was so groundbreaking about the all-female tour that Sarah McLachlan led in the late 1990s. But first, here's a clip from the trailer.
Singer Sarah McLachlan has launched an all-female tour.
This was the first time you'd seen anything like it.
Finding out that all of my favorite artists had played at this event.
A Lilith Fair bill is incredible.
Paula Cole, Suzanne Bigot, Erica Badu,
Sinead O'Connor, Missy Elliott, Sarah McLachlan, Sheryl Crow, Jewel. I was in disbelief that I'd never heard of it before.
Promoter said, you can't put two women on the same bill. People won't come. That's complete bullshit. And it put a huge fire under my butt to prove them wrong.
Chris Willman, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
Chris, you are our chief music critic, and you are also our chief reviewer of music documentaries. There's a new documentary coming out, Lilith Fair, Building a Mystery, and it's a deep dive back into the 1990s festival that, in my memory, ran longer than it actually did. It was led by Sarah McLachlan, who is an incredible artist and really was at the peak of her popularity and success. Her sound really defines that late 90s era very well, and she used her clout to put together a touring lineup of female musicians. And although the 1990s wasn't that long ago, it is true that that felt like a very radical move at the time. Let's start with Chris, having covered it in the moment back then. What was so different? So what stood out so much about the Lilith Fair and what Sarah McLachlan was trying to do with this tour?
Even today, there will be occasional all-women bills, and it still seems as novel as it did then. I mean, this past year I went to Brandy Carlisle's Girls Just Want a Weekend festival in Mexico, which is her annual attempt to basically revive Lilith Fair for one weekend as opposed to a whole summer, which is what Sarah McLachlan did back in the 90s. The spirit of it lives on, but it's still a radical idea to package women together. What Sarah McLachlan was dealing with was she went out on tour, I think 94, 95, and she took Paula Cole out as her opening act. And she became aware that this was like stunning to people, that you would think that people would come see a woman opening for a woman and that you didn't need the so-called variety of throwing a man in there. And why that idea has persisted is kind of a mystery, speaking of building a mystery. But so Sarah said, I don't want to do just two. I want to do a bunch. So the following year, she did a few test dates. Not all of them were even called Lilith Fair. It was still coming together. But then by the summer of 97, it was like, okay, we're going to do this full scale. We're going to go out to like every big amphitheater in the country with a somewhat rotating cast of characters. But for 97, 98, 99, those were the three main years for Lilith Fair where they really went out. And I was covering it for Entertainment Weekly at the time, and we did cover stories back to back a couple of years.
Obviously, it made a big impact if they're making documentaries about it and 25 years later.
But in the documentary, they have within the first few minutes Olivia Rodrigo on as the young expert witness who testifies that she had no idea there was such a thing as Lilith Fair until fairly recently, even though these are all her favorite artists. This will be an education for some younger people as well as a nostalgic trip for the elders who were there.
How do you think the music holds up?
Well, it was very well curated. When you've got people like Bonnie Raitt, you're on the right track. The second year, they knew they had a diversity problem, and so they brought in like artists like Erica Badu, who is about to play the Hollywood Bowl. She's still around. All these people are still around. Fiona Apple is not that active, but she remains one of the most respected artists in music. Sheryl Crow is still a superstar. We don't hear as much about some of the others like Natalie Merchant or Paula Cole, but by and large, Liz Fair, people like that, the Dixie Chicks were on it the third year. After they started thinking they should have black people and brown people, they thought, hey, why not some country artists too? So in a way, it was also pioneering, I think, the multi-genre festival. Now it's common to see, I think, multi-genre bills, and with Coachella, you see literally everything represented. But Lilith Fair, it's like, okay, the common denominator is not the music. It's not even the attitude so much. It's the common denominator is the gender. And so there's so much you can put under that umbrella as they eventually figure it out. It was exciting, especially that second year when you could hear some great R&B singers as well as folk pop singer-songwriters and rockers. And they really mixed it up. So I think it was influential in that way, which might not get as much credit for.
Chris, what would you say about the documentary itself? Does it work in terms of putting it into historical context and leaving you with an appetite to learn more?
I think it does. I was so immersed in Lilith Fair and its lore that I wanted it to be 3 hours long. But I think the documentary does a really good job of covering a lot of bases. It's very celebratory, as you would expect. But it doesn't completely gloss over some of the thorny issues. And then when it comes to the issue of should there be a Lilith Fair revival today, I think everybody who starts to watch this documentary will go, hell yeah.
Do you think there's a need for a Lilith Fair today?
I mean, it's a good question, and one that the movie raises at the end, because they do make the point that Taylor Swift goes out and has almost exclusively female opening acts. So there are sisters who are doing it for themselves, so to speak, and elevating other women in those support slots. On the other hand, there is a Instagram account, I forget the name of it, but they track all the festivals that are happening in the nation. And they do 2 versions of the poster, one with all the names, and then one that only has the female names. And then in most of those festivals, the entire poster art is blank except for a couple names, especially if it's genres like country or hip hop or something. Singer-songwriter festival might be a different deal. So when you see that altered image where all the male artists have been taken out and you just see 1 or 2 lone female artists, you start to feel, man, we have not come a single inch in the 28 years since Lilith Fair started. So there is a place for it.
You can only imagine the lineup with the incredible artists that are out there now. And again, so many of the top hit makers are women. Well, Chris, thank you for helping us put music and pop culture and the role of it all into context. I'm really eager to see this documentary, so thank you for previewing it.
I think you'll enjoy it.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Variety is getting ready to host its annual Entertainment and Technology Summit September 25th in Los Angeles. We have great speakers lined up. More to come on that next week. Next week, Variety will be globetrotting again. We'll produce digital dailies out of the Busan International Film Festival in Korea, the San Sebastian Film Festival in Spain, the Finnish Film Affair in Helsinki, and the Zurich Film Festival. 2 TV premieres on our radar next week are Season 2 of Doc on Fox and The Lowdown on FX. That's the new series from Reservation Dogs creator Sterling Harjo. Both shows land on September 23rd. Before we go, congrats to Julie McNamara. She's partnered with Matlock showrunner Jenny Snyder-Urman to ramp up development at Urban's Sutton Street Productions. McNamara spent many years in programming at CBS, and she most recently headed podcast content for Spotify. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Ramin Setoodeh and Chris Willman. Sticks, Nicks, Hick Picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in Monday for another episode of Daily Variety.